What's up, guys? Welcome back. I am here with a very special guest. John Flo and Flo Joe have come together finally for a video together. It is like the stars have aligned. It is amazing. I'm so excited. Welcome, Joe, to the channel.
Hey, man. I'm glad to be here. We're finally flowing together. It's awesome.
Hell yeah. Hell yeah. So for those of you that don't know, Joe here started out just in Flow this year, and he's created quite the buzz. His YouTube channel has gotten a good following. His Twitter has exploded. I think his Twitter channel is growing faster than anyone else I know, if you think about it percentage-wise. And it's because he's putting out awesome content. So if you're not following Joe, I'm going to go ahead and link all his stuff down in the description. So make sure and follow him on Twitter and check out his blog and GitHub where he shares all sorts of goodness. Okay, so on to today, the business at hand. Joe, what is it that you have made here that we are going to share today? Why don't you give us a quick 30-second breakdown?
Okay, so imagine you're a sales person, you're traveling around, you're carrying all this information about your clients, you're trying to keep up with them basically.
Yep.
Walk into a meeting and suddenly you're not prepared because something's happened 5 minutes ago. Before you've got into the building, it's all kicked off on Twitter, for example. You're just basically walking in blind. So
Yep.
How do you keep up with all that information in an ever-changing world? Well, just imagine you use Microsoft Flow. You use this thing called location, which is in preview at the moment. It's basically a GeoFence around a building, for example. You then go to that location. You get an email with all their latest tweets. You get an email with all the latest information your company has on them. And then you can walk in there knowing that you've got the best data that you can possibly have at that particular point in time. So that's what we're going to do today.
Okay, so a sales little handbook, like on the fly.
Yeah,
nice.
An up-to-date sales handbook.
See, great. This is good. I've actually gotten a request for this a few times from a few different people who have said, wouldn't it be awesome if a salesperson could just walk on site and have all of the latest relevant information, the cases that their customer has sent in recently, any social media items or news items, any relevant communication. And so that's what you're building.
Yeah, you were basically trying to make you proactive rather than reactive. You're going in there with all of the case information, all of the opportunities. You're being proactive. You're making that connection with your customer, showing that you care about them, and you have all the information that they need.
Okay, so for all of my salespeople that are watching, this one's for you guys. All right, Joe, go ahead, man. The floor is yours. Share your screen. Show us some of that Flow Joe magic.
Okay, so let's share this with you. Can you see that? Are you okay?
I got it. We see it.
Okay, right. So I'm basically on our little nice Flow site, and I've created a flow. It's empty at the moment.
Yep.
So the first thing I'm going to do is type location in here, and we get the location preview. So if we click on that, it just gives you your little trigger.
Yep.
And then we say create location. Now, I'm based in Cambridge. So if I then go on to here and go to Microsoft Research, Cambridge, and I can get their location right there. So it's just down the road from me. I copy that, come into here, paste that into here. And now my my trigger region is dead on their building. Perfect. Nice. Awesome. And you can then zoom in. So I know for a fact that it is currently on this little corner here, right next to the station. Perfect. It's a really nice building, but we'll get to see that later. So if I click save there now, what I've done is I've created a location trigger. So whenever I enter or exit that area, it's going to kick off this flow basically.
Yep.
What I want to do, obviously, is get data, and how am I going to get that data and where am I going to get that data from? So an example of that is I've created an account, just as an example. Obviously, you could have dynamics linked to this, etc. Yep. So if I go into my accounts and click on data, and then I go to all fields, I can show you all the information for the Microsoft research that I've entered already. So if I scroll along here, you can see it says Station Road, 21 Station Road, which is, as I said, just down there. I've got a longitude and latitude,
address,
and I've got basically all the information you're going to want on this customer.
Perfect.
Obviously, this will be beefed out for the customers that actually you've got a lot of information on, and we obviously want their Twitter handle as well and all their social media. So yeah, so basically I've just created a demonstration customer. So this is what we're going to be using during this flow creation.
And now that was made in CDS, just for someone who might not recognize that.
Exactly. So what we're going to use is CDS, so the Common Data Service. So if we come into our new action, you can see the Common Data Service here, and it gives you a list of all the stuff that you can basically do with it. So if you're unfamiliar with Flow, an action will just allow you to basically perform an action to basically go get information, etc. So let's go to list records, because we want to get the records of a customer at the current location of where you're at. You've just entered a GeoFence, i.e. you've gone to 21 Station Road, and you want to get information on Microsoft Research.
Yep.
So we go into here, we go into accounts, and then what we want to do is we want to use something called OData. Now, OData basically is just a data query that's going to allow you to pull information back for a potential customer, etc. So this is where we're going to use the longitude and latitude. So
I'll do a shameless plug. If you need to learn about OData, I have a video about that. I'll link it in the description.
Yeah, sounds awesome, man. So if we go back to the account, you can see all of the information names here, for example. So if I search for long and lat, you can see the actual field names here. So if we grab those and go back into our flow, we can say like address 1 latitude, and we want it to EQ equals, we want it to equals the current latitude that was being passed through from the location, and then we also want to obviously do the same thing for the longitude. So let's do that and pass that through. But what we need to do is we need to add an and, because what the and is doing is it's saying we want the center latitude and the center longitude to match up to the account. So then we pass in the longitude there, and then if we just save that, then so now what we've got is we've got a trigger that is going to go into your go into your accounts and check the longitude and latitude. If that's correct, it's going to pull information back to us, and we're ready to go with our flow.
Awesome.
Okay.
With you so far?
Yeah. So what we need to do now is we want to initialize a couple of variables. What this is going to allow us to do is get the information back for the one customer. So at this point in time, we're trying to imagine that there's only one customer in a building. So obviously over time you can build up and expand on more customers being in one location, etc. But at this particular point, we're just imagining Microsoft is only in that building. Let's continue. So what we want to do is we want to initialize a variable. So let's go to variables, initialize variable. What we want this to actually do is we want it to basically store our customer information. So let's call it customer, and we're going to set that as an object because we are getting a lot of data back and we want to store all that data in one object. And what we want to do is we actually want to pass in this information later. So we're only initializing this variable at the moment, but this is a good way of using parallel branches. So let's create another variable now. Oops, go back and go to a variable. And we can then initialize another variable at the same time, and we want Twitter ID. And this is just going to be a string because it's going to be one thing. Right, so to actually make sure your flow is nice and easy to follow for everyone else rather than just yourself, what you can do is you can actually come into here and click on rename, and we can actually say customer variable, and we can then say for this one we can rename and say Twitter. So obviously that gives you a lot. It's a lot easier to follow, basically, rather than variable 1, variable 2. What does that mean? I don't know.
Yeah, you'll see in the later steps when he starts to use the dynamic content, you'll kind of see how these things are named.
Exactly, yeah. So what we've done now is, just as a recap, we've got the longitude and latitude when we've entered a location. We've got the information back from a customer. We've initialized variables. Now what we need to do is actually assign the data that we've got back to these variables. So let's click Add Step here. So what we're actually going to do now is we're going to cycle through the information that we've got back and actually assign that information, and we're going to extrapolate the Twitter ID out of that as well, and then we can then move forward and start getting the information and sending it to the person.
Cool.
Wow. Right. So let's go. So condition. What we actually want to do is, as I said before, if there's more than one customer at the moment, we're going to have a problem. So
right.
How are we going to cycle through that information? How are we going to extrapolate that information? How are we going to display that information? So what we can do is we can actually set an expression to say if the length of the actual collection of the value of the list of items is greater than 1, then that will trigger a yes, and that will trigger a no. Or if we can set it as if it is equal to 1, that will trigger a yes and trigger a no. So what that would basically do is says if the lists that come back, the records that come back, is equal to 1 customer, we're going to trigger a yes. Yep. Awesome. That means that we can send a notification to the person saying, okay, you've entered this area. We found some results, but unfortunately, there's a problem because there's too many customers here, or we don't have any information on that.
Right.
So let's go through and send a notification to the person. So let's just say send a mobile notification saying, hi, we cannot send you information due to an error, for example, and then they'll get that notification. They know there's something's gone wrong. So let's just leave it at that for now, just as a
fair enough
error handle. And then we actually want to go through and set the variables. So how are we going to do this? We are going to do set variable, and then we're going to go customer information. So that makes it so much easier to know what variable you're actually setting, and and then we actually want to then set the variable. So how do we do this? Now we want to use the first variable of the first account that's come back to us in our list of accounts. So what we're going to do is we're going to just basically say we're going to go first here, and then we're going to pass in the list values. So what that's going to do is say, okay, get the value, the first customer that's come back, the first array that's come back, and dump it into our customer information variable. That's going to be one singular object, and then we can use information from that singular object, and we don't have to basically keep going through a cycle of, okay, please get me the customers. I need the first customer. I need to cycle through all these customers. All of that type of cycling is just wastage at this point. We basically want to store that information constantly, and that's why we're using a variable. So this will then allow us to access this at any time. Awesome. So now we have our customer information. Let's go on to the next step, which is setting another variable. This variable here is going to be our Twitter ID. Now, the Twitter ID needs to come from the same type of thing. So we're going to still use the first. So let's go first. And then we can then go, okay, we want to use the value. And then what you can do is you can, then from there, you can actually drill down into it. But there's actually a different way of doing this, because obviously, obviously here, like we've done the first and we've already got that information. We don't want to cycle through the other information again. So how are we going to do this? So the easiest way to do it, and I've got an expression that I've created before, is you basically go into here and you select your previous variable, which is your customer information. So if we want to do this, what we want to do is we want to say, okay, I want to get the first one. So variables, we pass in the customer information here. And then what we do is we select the actual field that we basically want to do. So we say primary Twitter ID. Now I know this from memory, but what you can do is you can come into here, into your CDS, and actually find that field. Let me look for Twitter. That'll be quick and easy, wouldn't it? Oh, where am I? Sorry, my bad. I don't know why I can't find that, but never mind. It's there. I know it is. Right. So yeah, so primary Twitter ID will then bring you the ID of the customer. What that will then do is it will return a string. So if we go OK and move that, oh, my bad, I've done it in the wrong one. Let me just up there. Oh, sorry. Yeah, and this is, and let's go into there. Okay. Yeah, so what this is then going to do then is going to basically pull the string into the Twitter variable. So now at this particular point in time, we have the customer information and the Twitter information. So what do we want to do at this particular point? We can then use the Twitter action, and that Twitter action is going to take in the variable that we've just pulled out and get the latest tweets from that particular person, for example. So if we go get user timeline, we can actually search their tweets, and then we can pass in the Twitter ID, and let's save it there. So, oh, interesting. So why has that happened? So this is why it's great to actually have feedback. So the template action set at variable line 2 at line 1 and column 2326 is not valid.
Oh, it's in that variable 2, your expression. So, you had variables twice, I think.
Yeah. So I've done that twice. So that is why it's great to have feedback from an error, so that you actually know what you are doing. And we can fix that on the fly. There you go. Update. Awesome. Okay, so now we've got the Twitter ID back, and we can use the get user timeline, and we can get that information back. What you can do from there then is you can just create a HTML table at this particular point and pass in the body, the tweet URLs, the mentions, user mentions, etc. So if we just pass the body in for an example of this, and you can actually set custom columns if you want to, or just allow it to actually do it for you. So what this will then do is give us a HTML table that we can just dump into a email that someone can then just look through, and they'll have all the tweets instantly onto that email. Yep. So then let's actually move forward from there then, and actually go into looking at getting information out of that the CDS. So if we can actually use the object that we got before and cycle through that information, or we can actually go back into the custom data service, and what you can do is you can go through the list of records, get the information back, etc. But what we didn't want to do is that we wanted to use our previous variable to save time and just basically computer usage. But what we can actually do is we can get a record. And how do we get this record? The record basically is something that we need. Like, so say we need to. Right, we have a timeout. Okay, I'm getting confused. Timeout.
Take a deep breath. Take a deep breath.
Ooh, ooh. Right, so what I want to do is I want to basically get records now from cases rather than my account. So if I come into here and select list records again and go back to my account section, I can then go to cases. And what this will allow me to do is pull the cases that my current company has. However, what I need to do is I need to link that to the current customer that I currently have.
Yep.
So how do I do that? Again, we use OData. So now OData will allow me to basically say, okay, I want to get the, let's go into here and actually look at it. So if we go into case, this is what I've created before, just as an example, you can then get your customer field. And what this does is it does basically an O lookup, and that will link to your current customer. So what I'm going to do is say my current customer is equal to, and then I'm going to pass the account in that I'm currently using, the unique identifier. It's going to cycle through the accounts and then bring me back the one with the account number that I'm needing.
Yep.
And then what I've got there then is I've got the current account information in the for the cases. So I've got my account that I've already done. I've got the Twitter from it, and now I've gone back and I've got the cases from that for that particular account. So obviously, I'm walking into the building. I've got all their up-to-date tweets. I've now got all their up-to-date case information for that particular client.
I love this.
So
I love how. Let me just stop for 1 second. I love how easy CDS makes all this. Like in comparison to like SharePoint or something else, just how you're able to go and grab these proper names and then use the OData filter on these very visible proper like system names. It just seems like I'm watching you and I'm like, wow, this is really pretty easy to do all this.
Yes, it's actually incredibly easy. So obviously, as you mentioned at the start of this video, I started this year learning all of this stuff. And learning about the CDS, it basically makes database information so easy, especially for people that don't know how to code, like your citizen developer. Basically, it allows anyone really to just be able to get information from anywhere and create awesome flows, and obviously you can link it to Power Apps as well. So it's really cool.
All right, sorry, go ahead, keep going.
Yeah, so what I'm going to do now then is I'm just going to create another HTML table. So this HTML table is my Twitter timeline, and the new one is just my cases. So obviously at the moment we're just dumping them into HTML tables, and then we're going to fire off an email with that information in. But you can actually break down the information and make it a lot prettier, as well as you can get a lot more information and be more proactive than we are actually currently doing. But this is a high level overview of what awesome stuff you can actually do right now.
Totally.
So what we're going to do then is we're going to pass the value of that in, and then we will have our nice new HTML table. Right, so then what we're going to do is we're going to move on to our opportunities. So exactly the same thing. We're going to go in, we're going to list records, we're going to go into my section and go to opportunities. There it is. And exactly the same thing we want to do up here. So what we've done up here is we've said, okay, we want the customer CR069 field to equal the account. We do exactly the same down here for the opportunities because we're using the same customer. So if we pass in the account unique identifier, it will cycle through that. And then what we want to do is just simply pass that through as a HTML table. Right, so now then we've got the value back into there. Okay, so that was quite a lot of information to take in. And let's just have a quick recap. So I, as a salesperson, walks into Microsoft Research at 21 Station Road in Cambridge. My flow kicks off. I get a list of information about that particular customer. I've kicked off two variables so that I can store that information. And then what I've done is I've cycled, I've checked to basically make sure there's only one customer. If there's more than one customer, this particular flow is not going to work for them. But if there is only one customer, which there is because I've just created that data for them, I'm going to set two variables. That variable I'm going to set is customer information, and then I'm going to set the Twitter ID. So what we're going to then do with that is go to Twitter with the Twitter ID. We're going to get the person's timeline. We're going to then use that timeline to pass it into a HTML table. That HTML table is going to generate all of their Twitters, etc. All their tweets, etc. Twitters. Yeah, so all their tweets basically into one table, and then we're going to cycle through. So this list records to here. Let's just rename that to be on point. And so these are cases for account. So this is basically going to cycle through all of the cases for that particular account and return those cases, and then we're going to dump those cases into a HTML table as well, and then we're going to go through and this one is basically getting the opportunities for account used. So then we're doing exactly the same thing as we did with the cases, but for opportunities. We're getting all the opportunity information, we're dumping it into a HTML table, and now basically we are ready to send all that information as an email to the person. So as soon as they walk through that door, they get an email and they've got all the information that they need.
I can just see all my salespeople viewers right now, like their mouth is starting to water. I can tell already. All the opportunities, all the cases, all the social, all the news, all in one place without any effort. That's pretty fantastic.
So I haven't set up my Outlook 365, so I can't use this. But you can just basically generate a notification and
you can. Oh yeah, there you go. You can do that.
Yep. Yeah, I was going to use the Office 365 plugin, the action. So
I was going to say you can also use the mail action, and that one is a system-generated mail by Flow by our SendGrid account.
Oh, awesome! I haven't used that yet. I'm
gonna it's like an old school, older looking icon.
Yeah, awesome. So we can then say customer information to pass through, and then we can pass the output. So what you can see is there's the Twitter timeline. So this is where the naming conventions come in. So I've got one here that says create HTML table. Doesn't really tell me much. I don't know what the output is. That's because I haven't renamed this one here, which is the opportunities. So if I go opportunities, created. So now if I come back into here, oh look, now I actually understand what that HTML table is. It makes your life a lot easier if you conform to standards and actually name things correctly.
For sure.
So then we can basically say, okay, let's pass the Twitter information through. Let's pass the cases information through, and then let's pass the opportunities. What we can then do then is we can then just obviously separate it, cases, Twitter, and opportunities. Oops, my keyboard likes to likes to type a load of stuff that I'm obviously not typing. So yes, then you can obviously then design your email however you want to, and have all that information laid out how you want to. So you can use it as like headings, etc. Move that information about. So obviously we're at the point now where we need to test this flow.
Let's see it.
Now, I can't test this flow because I do not have a geolocation that's going to be sent from my browser. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to go outside and I'm going to walk all the way, all 5 minutes, to 21 Station Road, and I'm going to show you a live trigger of it working.
Okay, well, then I guess what that means is to be continued. Joe is going to go and live test his flow.
Yeah.
All right, let's do it.
Right, so I'm on Tennyson Road in Cambridge. I'm about to walk down to Microsoft Research. What we're hoping is the GeoFence trigger will kick off our flow, and then we'll be able to see on my mobile phone, which I'll start recording in a moment, the email come through and all the information will be there. So let's get down there. Near the building, and we're expecting it to trigger anytime soon. And there it goes. I've just got a notification on my watch there, just saying that I've got company information email come through from Microsoft Research. I've just got an email come through. Let's open that up. As you can see, the Twitter information is just dumped at the moment, which we talked about. Obviously, you can increase, you can actually increase the size of this. Well, I obviously can't, but you can. But what you can actually do is you can then see all the cases there, the opportunities, and you can build upon this as a proof of concept. I think it shows how well the location works, and you can then build on with styling, etc. to actually use the location. And that's it, guys. So thanks for watching.
All right, and so Flow Joe took a walk down to Microsoft Research. You saw the flow trigger. He got tweets, he got opportunities, he got leads. It was all dummy information, but it illustrates for you what's possible, how you can stitch flow together using the geo trigger to then trigger a quick sales playbook so that when you walk in the door, you're equipped with all the best information, right? And you could use this for all kinds of things, for students at schools, for notifications, for people at work walking in, for notifications, for timesheets, in and out. There's a whole bunch of things you could do. Thanks, FlowJo, for making this happen and showing us how it all works. Really appreciate you being on the channel. Make sure and go and follow FlowJo. If this was valuable to you, go ahead and click that like button, click subscribe so that you don't miss another video. Much love from me. See you guys in the next one.